The opening 10 minutes to this horror film has scared me more than any other horror film has this year. For me, this is the scariest movie of 2026 so far. It's modern horror inspired by classic horror. It is fantastic and a must watch. My name's Rookie. I love horror movies, and this is Hokum. Now, what surprised me the most about this film is how quickly it got under my skin. The opening 10 minutes alone to this movie genuinely scared me more than any other film I've seen this year. And that's not surprising. This film was made by Damien McCarthy. Now, I think that Damien McCarthy has quietly become the most reliable horror filmmaker working today, because every single time this filmmaker releases a film, it becomes the scariest movie released in that particular year. Caveat was terrifying, Oddity was terrifying, and now Hokum is terrifying. And I would say Hokum is his scariest film to date. I think that Damien McCarthy has developed a mastery of folk horror, because he understands that true fear doesn't come from what we see, but from atmosphere. And Hokum is absolutely dripping with atmosphere. Hokum announces exactly what type of film it wants to be. This is a liminal mystery supernatural folk horror. The whole film is steeped in local folklore and this uneasy feeling that reality itself is beginning to shift underneath our characters' feet. Now, one of the most effective choices this movie makes is its protagonist, played by Adam Scott, who is fantastic, by the way. His character immediately feels out of place here. He is surrounded by Irish characters in a place that seems deeply rooted in local tradition and history. And because of that, his American, outsider status becomes impossible to ignore. He stands out from everybody that surrounds him, and that creates an immediate vulnerability, because he doesn't simply feel like a visitor, he feels like a target. So this movie wears its influences on its sleeve, but they still don't feel like derivative at all. And at various points in this movie, I was reminded of films like The Exorcist, The Shining, and just Stephen King's entire body of work. And it's, influence on The Shining, or comparison to The Shining, is particularly fitting. We have a writer protagonist in an isolated location that happens to be a hotel, who is struggling with some, deep personal issues, all the while being drawn into, increasingly more disturbing experiences. And like Jack Torrance, Adam Scott's character isn't somebody who the audience is immediately drawn towards. He doesn't seem like a very nice person. But I think that this makes his gradual descent all the more compelling. There is also a really strong resemblance to films like 1408, where the room itself, or the hotel itself, becomes a character, becomes a participant in the horror. The set in itself, the hallways, every single room, all the shadows, they feel like they are, an active character interacting with our characters, holding secrets, just waiting to be uncovered. One thing that Damien McCarthy has always done really well is his subtle use of foreshadowing. The film is constantly feeding the audience information without drawing too much attention to it. We overhear conversations, or catch the end of a conversation that seems to be important. Characters mention details in passing that only seem important much later in the film. The camera often lingers on certain things long enough for us to notice them, but not long enough for us to understand why. It's the type of movie that rewards attentive viewers, one that creates this constant sense that something is happening outside our field of vision. One of the things I love the most about Damien McCarthy's movies is his commitment to classical horror filmmaking. His films are rooted in the traditions of the genre. They understand the fundamentals of suspense and atmosphere and anticipation. Now, while there are some excellently placed jump scares in this movie, Damien McCarthy doesn't just rely on jump scares. He relies on building dread piece by piece until the audience is begging for a release. And that's why the jump scares are so effective in this film. And in many ways, his films just feel like modern versions of classic haunted house films. There is this sense of old-fashioned entertainment running through them, the same way that movies from the 40s and 50s sought to not just frighten audiences, but delight them too. This is horror that understands that being scared should be fun. So beneath the supernatural elements of this film lies a familiar thematic core. Like many great ghost stories, Hokum is ultimately a film about trauma. The hauntings and the apparitions and supernatural encounters that our main character is going through can be seen as representations of unresolved trauma, right? Psychological wounds that have been ignored but need repairing. The presences that are tormenting him don't simply seem to just be trying to scare him. This is a theme that horror has been exploring for decades, but Damien McCarthy approaches it with such sincerity that it never feels like a cliche. The supernatural seems to be a vehicle for exploring inner pain without completely replacing it. Now, interestingly, this movie does also contain traces of more modern horror influences. There are certain elements of this movie that reminded me of the movie Escape Room. There are situations in this movie where our main character is trying to solve a puzzle, trying to get out of this room in a way that is very similar to an escape room. And it's these sequences that give this movie a sense of, thrilling energy that really complements the slower moments in this film. And as a result, we get a movie that is able to genuinely terrify us whilst entertaining us in a really kind of thrilling way. And so perhaps this movie's greatest strength is its command of tension. There are scares in this movie where the audience knows exactly where things are heading, and we are desperate for the characters to make the right decision or the right choice. The movie understands exactly how long to wait for a scare, how much information to reveal, and when to pull the trigger. By the end of Hokum, I was thoroughly entertained. This is not just the scariest film I've watched this year, it's probably the most entertaining film I've watched this year. It succeeds because it understands exactly what makes horror work in the first place. It's classical horror in the best sense of the word. It's suspenseful, it's unsettling, and it is immensely satisfying. And with Hokum, Damien McCarthy demonstrates exactly why he is one of the most exciting voices working in horror today. He keeps putting out films that keep audiences frightened, engaged, and enthralled from beginning all the way through to the end. Have you seen Hokum yet? If you have and you liked it, let me know. If you have and you didn't like it, also let me know in the comments below. And if you love this type of content, if you love horror deep dives, horror movie recommendations, we'd love it if you would consider hitting the subscribe button and sharing this video with a friend. You can also find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, where I post videos every single day. But my name is Rookie, and I absolutely love horror movies, so if you do too, we would love you to become a part of this community. Be safe, be well, be good to other people, but more importantly, be good to yourself.